All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to go into our last and final lesson of our template section here in our template module. What we're going to talk about in this is how do we actually take that device template that we've now created based on referencing all of those feature templates, and how do we actually attach that to a device? How can we also export and edit the template variable spreadsheet so that we can import that spreadsheet later on and then use that to provision our devices as well? And then finally, how do we configure our devices using global and device-specific parameters that are attached to those particular templates? So we'll go ahead and get started here. The first thing that we want to do, of course, is we need to create a device template. Now, if we go to configuration and then we under configuration, we simply click on templates, we can select the template that we want, and then we can identify whether this is going to be a device template or it's going to be a feature template. And then when we hit create template, we're going to be given options to specify what type of template we want to create. Now, in this process, there are several steps that you can go through. We can certainly kind of walk through these steps, but this is a pretty self-explanatory process. Once you've created the feature templates, you've done most of the heavy lifting, and you just simply need to now reference those feature templates as you're creating the device template. All right, now in the available, once I click the create a template, we're going to see an available devices column. Let me switch to the next slide here. We're going to see a device model. We're going to see available device column, and then in that place we can select our devices that we want to create. If any of the devices that we're looking to create have a system IP address, a pop-up message will be displayed when we click next because we're modifying a system IP address, so there are no duplicates in this particular case. All right. Now, if we were attaching a vEdge router, we could do that. We could attach actually different types of devices in this particular case. The device template is a conglomeration, if you will, of all of those individual feature templates that we talked about. We spent quite a bit of time actually talking about those individual feature templates. We have to pick the device model that we're going to create because some of the features apply to some models, but some features don't apply to other models. We do have to specify the template name. We do have to specify the template description, 128-bit name, 2048-bit description, and then we can select one of these four categories. Actually, we'll probably end up configuring all these four categories, and we'll start to configure our template. So this is very similar to what we saw in the previous slide, or excuse me, the previous lesson. We were talking about building the template itself. After that's done, we have to configure the device on the overlay network. We attach a device template to a device by simply going to the main screen here, clicking on this little more button here, if you will, and then we can attach devices to a particular template. We can detach devices, we can look at the attached devices, we can actually export all of the devices that are attached to a template for further review or analysis if we'd like, or we can actually change individual device values from here, which provides us the ability to kind of override some of the defaults that might have been applied and so on if we want to do that. All right. We can also copy the template. We can delete the template. We can edit the template from here. So it's pretty simple. Whether we created it consolidating individual feature templates or by entering some sort of CLI text style configuration, we have to contain the templates themselves. The device template itself has to contain the device's complete configuration. And remember, we cannot mix or match templates that are configured from feature templates, device templates that are configured from feature templates, and CLI style configurations. It's just not possible in this particular case. They're completely different configuration modes. All right. So once we've gone through that process, or once we've said, let's go ahead and attach the device, so we've gone back here and we've said, let's go ahead and attach a device, we'll see a list of all the available devices that have been joined to the system. These are the system IP addresses, these are the device names, and we simply click, control click, if we will, to select multiple items, and we hit the right arrow, and then those devices will show up in the right column here. These are my selected devices column, and then I simply say attach. All right. Now, what will happen in this case now is the template's going to be applied to the device, and we're going to start to see those devices getting provisioned with their configuration. All right. It's a pretty simple process, not too difficult to go through. Now, within the feature template, some of the configuration commands and command options are the same or identical across multiple device types. Other configuration options, like the device's system IP address, its geographical latitude and longitude, the time zone, the overlay network site identifier, these are going to be variable options. So changing these would have to happen from device to device. So when we attach the device template to a device, we're going to get prompted to enter actual values for those particular command variables. A screen up will come up and say, okay, you're attaching device XYZ to this template. These are the variables that you need to specify so that we can populate that configuration for that particular device. We can do that manually if we'd like to, and we simply just type the values in for each variable and for each device. Or like we said, we talked about this in one of our previous lessons, we can upload an Excel file in CSV format that contains the values for each of those devices. And we reference the devices based on their serial number or chassis number, and then we can cross-reference those entries in the spreadsheet based on that information. All right, that's probably the preferred method, of course, is to go ahead and do that, create this template variable spreadsheet. We'll take a look at that right now. And that template variable spreadsheet will then allow us to specify each of the individual items. So feature templates that we create are always going to contain some sort of variable. We have to have the vManage NMS populate those variables with actual values when we attach a device template to a device. Like I said, we could do that manually, or we could create an Excel file that lists the variable values in each device, and then that saves them in a CSV format. So you see all these different columns here represent individual parameters that we would set on a device. The first parameter being the CSV device ID. And then each row would represent a unique device. Now, again, not all of these properties are going to apply to every single type of device. So you can have columns in this spreadsheet that might apply to a vEdge router, but don't apply to vManage or a vBond orchestrator or a vSmart controller. You can still have those columns in the spreadsheet. You can just simply leave those fields blank in the row for the variables that aren't going to apply to a particular platform. All right, so that means we only have to have one spreadsheet. That header row contains all the variable names, and then each row after that corresponds to a particular device, which allows us to define the values and the variables for those devices. Now, the first three columns in the spreadsheet have to be filled in. That's the CSV device ID, the CSV device IP, and the CSV host name, right? So the serial number of the device, that's what actually allows us to cross-reference the device to a uniquely identifiable ID. For vEdge routers, we get the serial numbers of the vEdge routers in the authorized serial number file that actually gets sent to us from Cisco. For other devices, the serial numbers are included in the signed certificate that we receive from either Symantec, the Symantec CA, or from our root CA in our enterprise. The CSV device ID is the system IP address. Again, that's kind of like the router ID, if you will, of that particular device. And then the CSV host name is the host name of the device, and that allows us to populate the host name of the device when it registers. We can create a single spreadsheet for every single device in the overlay network. It could be the same spreadsheet for our vSmart controllers, our vBond orchestrators, our vEdge routers. We just simply don't have to specify the variables that don't necessarily apply to those particular devices. All right? So it's a pretty easy way to manage it, and there's plenty of references online that people have already created these CSV files, so you can actually go out online pretty much download one that's already populated with all the variables that you need. Just make sure you get one that matches the appropriate software version that you guys are running on your environment. Once we've created that CSV file, we can then just simply import that file. We go into configuration and templates, and we simply go ahead and import the template, and then we can just browse to the file and upload the file. If there are errors in the template, we'll get some reports of those errors. Sometimes things might get ignored if they're not valid entries. And then we simply locate the file, we upload it to our device. All right. Once the devices have been imported, once they've gone and they've registered and they've gotten their configuration, we push the new configuration template to a device. We can view changes between the old and the new templates. There's actually a CLI Diff pop-up window that opens with the config Diff tab, and that's actually selected by default in this case. It's going to display a side-by-side view of the differences between the old configuration that was on the device and the changes that were made to the configuration. If this is a brand new device, that's going to be a pretty significant amount of changes. If it's a redeployed device, it might only be a few minor changes. So to view those changes in line, you click the inline diff button that's located to the right of the window, and then you'll see the differences that are highlighted. And that's just a quick way of to provide you the opportunity to kind of verify what changes were applied to the device and so on. We can also download the configuration of the devices. We simply click the Configure Devices button to download the configuration files into the devices. And then we can see, oh, okay, that template was successfully attached to the device. We see here, for example, the success. It shows us all of the progress messages to indicate that the device was populated with its configuration. All right, so that was just a quick lesson on how do we finally bring all this together. We apply the templates to our devices. Very, very simple lesson. Because again, all the heavy lifting has already been done when you're setting up the system initially for the control and data plane configurations on your SD-WAN fabric. With the feature templates specifically, that's where most of the work is, and then creating your individual device templates. I mean, if you think about it, you're probably only going to have maybe 5 or 6 different device types in your entire enterprise. A vEdge cloud, a vEdge router, maybe a couple of different models of vEdge routers, vSmart controllers, and the vBond orchestrators. And that's pretty much it, and vManage, of course. All right, so we talked about when a template's been created, it's added to the list of available configuration templates, where we can then select it and attach it to a device. To be used by a device, the template has to be attached to a device. One thing that I just want to repeat one more time, though, we can only attach one device template per device. We're not allowed to attach multiple device templates, so we have to make sure that the appropriate feature templates are applied to the device template configuration in order to ensure that the device is getting its appropriate configuration. The template variable spreadsheet has to be exported and edited with device-specific parameters. After that template variable spreadsheet has been edited, we need to import that back into vManage NMS, and then we use that template variable spreadsheet that contains all the device-specific values to download the configuration to the appropriate attached devices on the network. All right, so that concludes that lesson, but it also concludes the module. We talked about a lot of things in this module, right? What are vManage templates? What are feature templates? How can we assign them? How can we create them? What is the Excel CSV file? How does that contain device-specific values? We looked at in detail quite a few of the templates themselves, the feature templates, the system, the logging, the OMP, the BFD, and so on. We also looked at a potential of all the other templates that might exist. The configuration elements in a device include things like the system parameters, the transport and management VPNs, the service VPNs, that we know that the system configuration is part of the basic information for the device, and that includes things like system ID, system IP, host name, etc. Right? The transport and service VPN parameters are used to configure the WAN connectivity and service routing features. One is for the overall management of the SD-WAN fabric, and the other is for the management of the service VPNs that service the clients. So when a template's been created, we can attach a device. That template variable spreadsheet has to be exported and edited with device-specific parameters so that we can meet the requirement of those individual device parameters that need to be configured on an individual device. All right, so let's wrap up this module by going through some of these review questions. The first question is, the scope of a parameter can either be blank. Excuse me, let me read that one more time. The scope of a parameter value can either be, and we have to choose 3 options. So the scope, if you recall, is there's a default value, that's the one with the checkbox. There's a global scope, which is the one that has the globe icon, and then there's the local scope, which is the one that has the little host icon, right? But I don't know if that's what they're actually asking about in this particular question. Actually, it is what they're asking about, but it's not defined as local scope. So actually, device-specific would be a better choice here, right? You know, device-specific kind of implies that it has a local scope, but that's a better term to describe what is specific to a particular device. So I would say the answer in this case is default with the checkbox, device-specific with the little host icon, and global with the little globe icon. All right? Next question is, the templates variable file is a CSV file containing 1 row for each variable for the device configuration. That's actually false, right? The columns represent the variables. The rows represent the devices. All right? So they're trying to be a little tricky there. Which parameter would not be configured in a system feature template? Well, we know host name would be, site ID, system IP. So the BFD hello parameters, those would be configured in the BFD feature template, not in the system feature template. So that would be the one that I would choose as not. All right, we have a few more questions here. What OMP parameter can be configured with the OMP template? Advertisement interval, BGP remote AS, by the way, you have to choose 2 of these, graceful restart for OMP, or organization name. So the advertisement interval we talked about, the graceful restart we definitely talked about. The BGP template's going to be used for BGP. Organization name is going to be under multiple templates, but not under the OMP template. So the answer in here in this case is the OMP advertisement interval, which is 1 second by default, and then the graceful restart period. All right. Configuration elements in a device include overlay network parameters, service VPN, system parameters, or transport VPN. This is kind of a tricky one because what are we looking at? Configuration elements in a device. So what are we applying to a device? We need to choose 3. And I would say overlay network parameters don't really apply to a device as a whole. We assign VPNs to a device, certainly, like a service VPN and a transport VPN. And we know that we're going to apply system parameters to a device. So I would say in this particular case, the answers are service VPN, system parameters, and transport VPN. Okay? Question number 6. The transport VPN carries control traffic via the configured WAN transport interfaces. That is actually true, right? The transport VPN is what allows us to build the SD-WAN fabric. We have a management VPN, the transport VPN, VPN 0, and we have our service VPNs, which are the non-VPN 0 and non-VPN 512. Multiple device templates can be attached to a device. That is false, right? We can have multiple feature templates attached to a device template, and we can have the same device template attached to multiple devices, but we cannot have multiple device templates attached to a single device. And then finally, the last question, device-specific parameters are contained in the template variable spreadsheet. That's absolutely true. Of course, we want to attach those device-specific parameters in that spreadsheet. That's the whole point of having that spreadsheet, is so that we can apply those device-specific parameters. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up this module. Congratulations. We'll see you guys in the next module. It's going to be a good one. We'll see you there.